Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Caplen, editor of The Banker magazine. I'm presenting the second of 5 videos we're doing with HSBC, all with the theme of connecting to growth opportunities throughout the world. I'm here with Arindam Das. He's the regional head of HSBC Securities Services for the Middle East and North Africa. And we're going to start by talking about the economic outlook in the Middle East. Now, Arindam, we've seen a bit of turbulence in the Middle East over the last few years in particular countries, not in the Gulf where you're based. But what sort of impact has that had on the general economic outlook in the Gulf and in the Middle East?
I think the Middle East is not a homogeneous region. The Middle East primarily can be split into 2 broad blocks. One is that of the oil exporting regions and the oil importing countries. Given the current price of hydrocarbons, the countries which are exporting oil have a very strong economic outlook. On the other hand, countries which are importing oil do have some challenges. So we've got to differentiate between the 2 blocks.
Okay, well now give us a bit of a lowdown on the Gulf states and in particular the UAE where you're based.
The Gulf states actually are doing very well because, as you know, UAE has significant oil reserves. Qatar is one of the top countries in terms of natural gas. So these 2 countries in particular are doing very well. Infrastructure projects are being undertaken. Qatar, as you know, has won the World Cup 2020 mandate. So the amount of infrastructure spending that we are seeing in this region is unprecedented.
Okay, but the UAE had its own financial crisis just a couple of years back, didn't have to restructure a lot of its debt. Is it fully over that now? Are we looking at growth opportunities in the UAE?
If you go to Dubai, for example, which did have a difficult problem after the financial crisis, you will just see a very different place now. It's almost back to the pre-2008 September days. The buzz, the vibrancy that you see in Dubai is absolutely fantastic. The property prices are again starting to go up, which is actually causing a concern in some quarters. But overall, you just see Dubai thriving. And in a way, the problems of some of the other Middle East countries seem to have benefited Dubai, which is reasserting.
Because it's a safe haven, presumably.
It's a safe haven. It's re-emerging as the financial center of the region, as a hub, as a gateway to the region. So Dubai is actually doing extremely well. Abu Dhabi, of course, it has its own Vision 2030. It may be slightly slower than Dubai in terms of the pace at which it's executing its project. But again, it's got all the oil reserves that it has. It is absolutely a huge behemoth. Qatar, again, has significant projects. So if you look at these specific countries, the economic prospects do look very bright.
Okay, so that's all very good news in the region. But I mean, we're in a global world, so you can't really not be affected by what's happening in the Eurozone, what's happening in the United States. I mean, how much do you expect those events to impact on the situation in the Middle East, in the Gulf in particular?
There is definitely an impact. And if I go back a few years, just before the financial crisis, around 2007, 2008, one of the reasons why the Middle East stock markets were doing extremely well is this theory of decoupling that existed at that time, saying that the Middle East was decoupled from the rest of the world. As we know from our experience in 2008, that is not the case. We are part of the world as much as anybody else is, and therefore it's had its effect on the Middle East as well. For example, we talked about oil. Unless there is growth in the world and the world consumes oil, obviously oil prices would not be what it is. The question, however, is where does the demand of oil come from? It doesn't always have to come from Europe and the US. We know that there is significant growth from Asia, from China, from India, etc. So I think as long as there is global demand, and global demand is required because the Middle East is also a huge trading zone. So unless there is trade happening between the various parts of the world, the Middle East can't play its role as a trading hub. So growth in the world is very important.
Okay, Arindam, thank you very much for outlining the economic view on the Middle East. And in a few moments, we're going to talk about the capital markets situation.